Ethan Cole hadn't planned to turn on the lights. He sat in darkness, a cold glass of bourbon in his hand, eyes fixed on the window overlooking the house next door. The porch light of the Langford residence had just gone out, 11:11 p.m. sharp, like every night. Not a minute earlier, not a minute late. A rhythm too precise to be casual. Ethan knew. He kept track of everything. In the small notebook next to the hidden camera behind his curtains, every movement of his neighbor was logged in neat, disciplined handwriting. It started with water running at night, then the flicker of light from the basement when the rest of the house was dark. Metal on metal, sharp sounds that had nothing to do with gardening tools. Tonight, Ethan decided not to write anything down. He just sat there, silent, listening. At 11:37 p.m. precisely it happened. A muffled gasp, strangled mid-breath, not a scream. The kind of sound that exists in the instant when the throat tries to cry out before being crushed. Ethan sprang up. The bourbon slipped from his hand, shattering on the floor, but he didn't care. His ears perked like a predator. Another noise, metal clattering, then silence, thick, oppressive silence, like the entire block had stopped breathing. He crept to the window, opening it just a crack to avoid the hinges squeaking. Cold air rushed in, carrying a pungent blend of chlorine, disinfectant, and something sweet and burnt, like roasting flesh that hadn't finished cooking. A faint light spilled from the basement window slit near the edge of the lawn. It didn't flicker. It didn't waver. Like an operating light buried underground. Ethan stepped back slowly. He didn't hear anything else, but his heart was pounding, out of sync with the quiet around him. He moved to the storage closet, pulled open a drawer, and retrieved his infrared binoculars and audio amplifier headset. These weren't standard civilian gear. They were issued to him during his last tour in Kandahar. He'd kept them, not out of nostalgia, but because he knew someday he'd need them again. Back at the window, he donned the gear. Through the pale green hue of the binoculars, Langford's yard looked empty, still, but sound didn't lie. Something was moving, something wet, something heavy, a faint dragging noise, rubber wheels across concrete, one squeal, two, then a stop. Ethan ripped off the headset. He didn't breathe. He knew how it sounded. Paranoid, absurd, but that noise, that damp shuffle, he'd heard it once before, on a mission. A locked container in the desert, full of migrants, most dead, the rest not entirely human anymore. He threw on his jacket, grabbed a tactical flashlight, and stepped out the back door. The grass was slick with dew. Each step sank slightly into the soft earth. The gate to Langford's yard wasn't locked, it hung ajar. The porch light buzzed dimly, yellow and sickly like it had been coated in dried blood. He moved along the side of the house, staying flush with the wall. His hand gripped the flashlight, but he didn't turn it on. Instead, he listened. There was breathing, deep, damp, constrained. The kind of breathing you hear only when someone is forced into a position their body wasn't meant to hold. A kind of breath that didn't belong above ground. The basement door was ajar, unlocked, silent. Ethan pushed it gently. The stench hit him like a body blow, formalin, bleach, and the unmistakable aroma of charred human skin. He couldn't see anything yet, but the light from below cast a narrow beam up the staircase. The operating light was still on. And the first thing he saw when he stepped down one creaking stair was a small stainless steel tray. On it lay a human eyeball, moist with sinew still attached, nestled gently on a square of white gauze, like a gemstone offered for some sacred ritual. Ethan didn't turn back, he kept walking. The first thing he noticed was the cold. Not the kind that bites, the kind that wraps around your spine and stays there. Ethan descended the stairs slowly, his boots barely grazing the concrete steps. The flashlight in his hand remained off. There was enough light down here. A sterile, clinical beam from a surgical lamp suspended above a stainless steel table. The smell intensified, not like a butcher's shop. This was older, like dried tissue sealed in formalin, preserved but never forgotten. Around him the walls were covered with shelves, glass jars, some empty, some not. He reached the final step and crouched behind a support column. Directly in front of him, maybe 6 meters away, stood Dr. Langford, gloved, gowned, and hunched over what looked like a patient on the table. The man was humming, softly, a slow, tuneless murmur. Ethan held his breath. Langford's hands moved with mechanical precision. He wasn't rushing. He wasn't experimenting. This was routine. A slice along the sternum, peeling back skin. A retractor clicked open, revealing muscle, then bone. He wasn't alone down here. Ethan shifted slightly and his shoulder bumped into something soft. He turned. It was a child-sized mannequin, or so he thought, but it wasn't plastic. The skin was too real, slightly wrinkled. The eyes were glass, but human-shaped. A preserved corpse dressed in a school uniform, arms posed to hug something that wasn't there. One of the fingers had stitching around the knuckle and the nail was missing. A display. Ethan turned back to Langford, who was now carefully extracting the heart. No emotion, no hesitation, just a surgeon retrieving what he needed. The heart went into a metal bowl, placed beside several others, labeled date, age, notes. Ethan's throat clenched. Langford moved to a cabinet, opened it. Ethan saw them, rows of faces. Some dried like leather masks, some stored in preserving fluid, others stitched into bizarre collages, Frankenstein tapestries of cheeks, lips, and eyelids. He was building something, a pattern, a taxonomy of the human form. Ethan stepped back. His boot scraped the concrete. Langford froze, slowly turned his head. Their eyes met. Langford didn't shout. He didn't charge. He smiled. "You're early," the old man said. Ethan moved first. Not a thought, just instinct. His arm shot forward, flashlight gripped like a baton, aimed for Langford's temple. But the man wasn't surprised. He had prepared for this. As Ethan lunged, Langford stepped back, not in fear but in calculation. His hand swept toward the surgical table. The edge of a scalpel flashed in the sterile light. Pain erupted across Ethan's side. A shallow slice, not deep but precise. Enough to make him recoil, enough to throw off his balance. Langford didn't follow up with another strike. He didn't need to. He pressed a button on the wall. There was a click, a metallic hiss. The basement door above slammed shut. The staircase lit up in red. Ethan turned, ran 2 steps up, then stopped. 3 figures were blocking the stairs. At first glance, they looked human, dressed in patient gowns, but as they stepped into the light, their forms were wrong, too still, too stiff. Their skin was waxy, their movements synchronized. They weren't alive, but they were animated. Steel rods ran through their spines, pulleys embedded into their joints, a grotesque fusion of cadaver and machine. Their faces were blank, some stitched, some stapled, mouths stuck in frozen smiles. Langford's voice was calm from behind. They can't feel. They don't resist. Perfect cooperation. The puppets moved down 1 step at a time, each motion triggered by cables embedded in the walls. Ethan backed down, breathing hard. The blood from his side was spreading now, darkening his shirt. He turned and sprinted deeper into the basement. It wasn't a basement. It was a labyrinth, corridors made of drywall and steel doors. Each room was a cell. Each door had a small window. And behind every window, someone watched. Some had mouths sewn shut. Some had no mouths at all. One was tapping the glass rhythmically, tap, tap, tap. It matched the pulse in Ethan's ears. He took a turn. Another door. It opened. And then darkness. Hands grabbed him. Something sharp jabbed into his neck. Coldness spread. A numb wave. His body betrayed him. Legs gave out. Arms dropped. He collapsed like a broken puppet, twitching. Langford stood over him. Calm, gentle, still smiling. "I won't hurt you, Ethan," he said. "I'm going to fix you." Darkness swallowed everything. He woke strapped to the surgical chair, arms outstretched, legs bound, metal cuffs around his wrists, tight enough to cut circulation. His shirt was gone, chest bare, cold. The lights above glared like interrogation beams. Langford was already preparing tools. A tray rolled forward, scalpels, bone saws, surgical drills, measuring tape, skin clamps, syringes filled with blue fluid. A small speaker clicked on overhead. From it came the sounds of breathing, his own from earlier, recorded and looped. "You were a soldier," Langford said, setting down a pair of forceps. "That means your body knows pain. That means you've been tested." He leaned close, eyes level. "But no one has ever tested you like this." He didn't wait for questions. He injected the blue fluid into Ethan's forearm. It burned like acid, muscles clenched, vision blurred. The world began to split into fragments. Langford tilted Ethan's head gently, like a lover. Let's begin with symmetry. He picked up a caliper, measured Ethan's ears, nose, eyes. Your left eye is 2.3 millimeters lower than the right. He reached for the scalpel. Let's correct that. Ethan tried to scream, but there was no sound. Only the hum of the surgical lamp, only the cold whisper of steel meeting skin. Only the beginning. The pain had become a language, not a scream, not a cry, but a lexicon of sensation. Each cut, each pull, each tightening of suture thread was a syllable. Ethan no longer reacted to it. He listened, he learned. Something had shifted inside him, not broken, not shattered, but reorganized. The table was cold, his skin was colder. Langford worked without rush. A pair of micro-scalpels danced in his hands. The left side of Ethan's face had been opened, peeling back the skin with surgical precision to expose the underlying tissue. Muscles gleamed wetly under the operating light, twitching in rhythm with each heartbeat. Above him, a mounted monitor displayed Ethan's face in real time, split-screened. On the left, the current state, flesh unpeeled, stitches halfway complete. On the right, a rendered projection of what Langford called the symmetry standard. "You were born asymmetrical," Langford murmured, voice detached, clinical. "But I forgive you. Evolution is messy. Nature tolerates flaws. I do not." He reached for a clamp, pinched the skin near Ethan's jawline, adjusted it, restitched the inner dermal layer at a higher point. Ethan's vision swam. He couldn't feel his tongue. The anesthesia wasn't local. It was neurological. Langford had injected something that paralyzed speech but left awareness intact. A clear window into horror. "I'm not hurting you," Langford whispered, leaning close enough for Ethan to feel his breath. "I'm refining you." Behind him, in the gloom, other tables awaited. Other patients. One was missing an entire lower half, suspended on hooks, arteries sealed, head moving slowly side to side in a permanent nod. Another had no skin, the muscle glistening like lacquered red silk, yet her eyes followed Ethan wherever he moved. They were all awake. They had all been educated. Langford finished the facial reconstruction and stepped back, admiring his work. "You look closer now," he said. Ethan blinked once, the only movement he could make. Langford leaned forward and whispered, "You see it, don't you? The logic, the peace that comes with order, with elimination of defect." He turned on a second screen. Footage played. Ethan. Moments from his life, stitched together from hidden cameras, eating alone, showering, cleaning his guns, crying in the dark. "You were already broken, Ethan. I'm not destroying you, I'm aligning you." He stepped back into the shadows. From above, soft mechanical arms descended, each tipped with different tools, suture guns, dermal lasers, microblades. Langford's voice came from everywhere now, through hidden speakers. "Now let's fix the spine curvature, that slouch, that old war wound. You don't need it anymore." Ethan's back arched as a cold clamp snapped around his neck. The machine began humming, and for the first time, Ethan did not resist. Because part of him agreed, because part of him had always hated the imperfection, because part of him was beginning to become Langford.